Thursday, September 1st, 2022. I'm Steven Sersky. This here is episode number 32 of my podcast. And today I have another guest, Omar Badr. Badr? We discuss how to pronounce his name. Hailing from Egypt, he's a fellow expat here in China, but he's leaving actually 2 weeks or so from now. Before he left, I thought it'd be a good idea to sit down and discuss some of his experiences here in China, what it's like to live in Egypt, and what his plans are going forward. He talks about some of the things he struggled with here being in China, especially during the time of COVID, but he also talks about some of the other things that kept him around, some of the cultural aspects that kept him busy in his time here in China. Episode number 32, we're only clocking in at just over 2 hours here, or just under 2 hours, so you folks who wanted a bit shorter of an episode, here you go. And this is episode number 32 with Omar Badr. All right, well, then we'll begin. Thanks for coming, I appreciate it. So this is episode 32, I guess, already, that you're here, and you're taking off.
I am indeed.
Omar?
Yes.
Omar Badr.
I think you're pronouncing it wrong.
Yes.
Badr. And
Badr.
It's difficult for native speakers to get the D and R together. So it's Badr. It means full moon in Arabic.
Okay.
Yeah.
What does your first name mean?
It has no name, but most of the time Arabic words have roots, and the root kind of gives you connotations of the name. So the root of my name is Umr, which means longevity, which can mean also something like being in a state of flow, so to speak, something like that.
Right. Is there a lot of thought given to naming children?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
How much?
People think a lot, and especially in the Middle East, yes, like I think it comes as no surprise, it's a predominantly religious part of the world, so names are important. People give them a lot of thought, and sometimes they spend months before the birth of a child thinking about names. And I guess this is especially true now because people give birth to fewer children. So I think it happens everywhere in the world now. So yeah, people take their time and they try to find nice meanings, nice connotations to the name, both in terms of the pronunciation and the meaning as well. So, yeah.
Do they worry about the characters? Because Arabic...
No. Arabic is just like English.
So it's an alphabet.
Yeah, it's an alphabet, so it doesn't really matter.
But they don't care how it's all constructed. Because in Chinese, they have to worry about the
morphology is not an important part of the name. Yeah.
How differently are men's and women's names treated? Is there a big difference? I mean, Egypt, Middle East, has a reputation for a difference between the genders.
Yes, yeah. I like how you put it, a reputation. It's a nice way of putting it. There isn't a lot of gender neutral names, I'm thinking now. I think a good kind of distinction has to be made between male names and female names. It is an important factor when it comes to naming children.
You said that the child rate, the birth rate is going down. So what's the typical size of an Egyptian family these days?
Surprisingly, it has grown from 2 in my parents' generation. This was quite the norm, and I think this was when birth control and family planning campaigns were at their best because of financial support from the US aid, and from European Union as well. So they were making a lot of contraceptives available, especially in the poorer parts of Egypt, and Egypt saw this as a very important development goal to decrease the number of new births to control the population growth. But now I think things are a bit it's gone out of control a little bit. By that I mean that most people now give birth to 3, I assume. So yeah, like in the past, maybe before the 1950s, my dad had 13 siblings. Yeah, he came from a village, and my mom too. Yeah, but they gave birth to only 2 children. I guess most of this generation did, and now people are back to like 3.
Mhm.
Like we're talking middle class families.
Right. That's a good number, though. 3's a good number.
Yeah, 3's a
someone
good
to
number.
fight with, someone to play with. I think so.
That's
But
it.
I don't know. Like China's, they've upped it to 3, but I think most people are doing calculations of the money. I was doing the calculations. Okay, but it's being a foreigner and then being a Chinese national here, a couple. In terms of cost, like if you put your child through the public education system with the Gaokao system, it can be relatively cheap to put the kid through. The extra tutoring and stuff like that would cost you. But if you want to go international school, I mean, it's horrible.
Or send your kid maybe later to study abroad. Or
Oh yeah, like one of the things like in our line of work, one of the things I try to appreciate and remind myself of when I find a student is struggling, it's like think of the farmer, think of the dad. He doesn't have a combine. He's out there, with his hands ripping out everything and working, toiling in the actual sun. Whereas I'm complaining that my internet doesn't work, right, or the water's not cold enough.
We're privileged.
Very, very. I mean, sitting up on this floor and everything looking out, but
I come from a third world country, but I still feel like my problems are first world, definitely.
Well, I mean, you moved though. I mean, so you were able to make that jump. You're saying Egypt is a third world country?
It is, I think, by definition. There is a definition.
Are they playing the word game? We're developing, but we're so developed.
No.
No?
We're honest. If anything, we want money from
Yes.
developed countries. So yeah, we still say that we are a developing country. We don't deny that. I think we're very honest. Even the government. We have a lot of national pride, of course. But when it comes to things like that, we kind of admit it.
Mm-hmm.
We have problems and we want to work on our problems. We want money if donors can give us money. Yeah.
Right. So you say there's pride. When Chinese people say China has 5,000 years of history, what do you say? I'm putting you on the spot here. I mean, I had this conversation. I had this conversation with another colleague, and she kind of laughed when I asked her before.
I'm leaving. I can always prepone my flight. That's a good question. I think one of the things that sets China apart, or like gives China an advantage here, is the fact that it's an uninterrupted civilization, so to speak, whereas Egypt was conquered by a lot of different forces, so Persians, Romans, Greeks, you name it. So we haven't had this sense of continuity to our civilization. So when we talk about our history, we usually talk about like ancient Egypt, whereas later periods in our history were basically other people ruling us. So whatever kinds of achievements they made, we can't really claim them. So even like modern Egypt was started by Muhammad Ali, who was basically from Albania, modern day Albania. So I think in a way the Chinese have more right to feel proud of their achievements.
But you guys have the pyramids.
We do.
I mean, but I remember I sent you this picture of the pyramids and houses. I said there were houses, but I guess you called them
engulfed by slums.
Slums. I mean, depends on how you want to interpret the picture. Are they homes? Are they houses, dwellings, or are they slums? Where a lot of there's just poverty, right?
Well, I come from Egypt, and I can tell you,
okay,
they are slums. Yeah, they're not very well planned, not very well thought out, and I think this is a fault of Mubarak regime in particular. Yeah, I blame a lot on his rule and his 30 years of not giving a shiny shoe about the country. Yeah, so he was more in favor of stability, and sometimes stability means nothing happening on the ground, and I think that was where we were for a long time under his rule.
Could the Egyptians not do anything on their own though? Like, did they have that attitude? Because like the States, everyone hated Trump. Actually, I don't think anyone's ever liked a president. Like in my living memory, I don't know anyone who's ever liked a politician or a party. But the States keeps on moving. Canada, kind of keeps on moving as well. I would say Europe keeps on moving in one direction, like progressing, despite the the powers that be, and I'm going to put that in quotation marks because I still don't understand how politicians have. I understand why, but was there ever an attitude in the Egyptian mindset, the common persons, like we can do better, we will do better, there is a better life ahead if I just work more today, or was that never there?
I feel in general, my parents' generation were defeated a number of times, both in a figurative sense and in physical sense of the word. So there was the Suez invasion. There was also the 1948 war that we lost to Israel, and a couple of other defeats. And then I think there was a generalized sense of cynicism among people in Egypt. And there was this point when there was a lot of momentum for a change from younger people like myself, my generation, and all of this culminated in the 2011 revolution. There was, I think, the first time in modern Egyptian history that people had a voice, so to speak, and they were persistent and adamant to change the status quo. It's too soon to argue whether or not this has brought about real change on the ground. But I think this has changed the situation a little bit, and I think now people are more, they hold the government more accountable now, and I think this is a change in the collective mindset in Egypt. For various reasons, people are not still, they don't voice their opinions as much as they should, or as much as people in Western democracies do. Yeah.
We were talking before about maybe it's too much in some cases.
Yeah.
Do Egyptians look, though, at the Western sort of ability to mouth off, to voice everything on social media, even if not social media? Do they look at sort of envy with that sort of openness, or do they care?
Right now, okay, we can go back to what you were saying about the difference between Egyptian and Chinese history and how much pride we have. I can draw another parallel here, another similarity. I think, of course, I've lived in Beijing, or at least this is where I spent most of my time here while I was in China. I feel like in general, the Chinese, yeah, we can use this word, the Chinese, because there's more homogeneity here in terms of political thought and other things. Whereas in Egypt, I think right now, the society is both polarized in extreme directions, and also there is a lot of differences between socioeconomic classes, and that leads to different ways of thinking. Also, people get all sorts of different kinds of education. You got people who only speak English, sometimes they can't even speak Arabic because they went to international schools, they studied abroad, they belong to a certain socioeconomic class, and then you've got people who've got no education whatsoever. So I can't say that it's how the Egyptians think. Some people, I think, again, my generation, younger people who are more or less well educated, I think, yes, they look up to the West and to Western democracies and freedom of speech. People enjoy there and feel like we are entitled to the same thing, we just need to fight more. Some of them surrender, like myself, and just decide to immigrate. And I guess for my parents' generation and maybe older people, they don't have, they're just basically want to side with leaders, and they find excuses to side with leaders. And if they're not happy with the situation, it wouldn't be because of political reasons or freedom of speech or things like that. It would just be for economic reasons. Maybe they can't put food on the table, for example. But in general, people don't care much about democracy and freedom of speech, most people. And I guess that's because a lot of people in Egypt are not very well educated, and the economic situation for most classes is not great, so that's why people don't care. And I guess it's easy. You were saying earlier that the media, even in the West, is owned by a certain group of people who live in certain locations or cities. I think it's the same thing in Egypt. If you think about the media, um, it's not representative of the situation on the ground. Like in the aftermath of the 2011 revolution, there was lots of talk on talk shows about democracy and human rights, but there was this director, Sandra Nashat. She went to the streets and asked people in villages in the countryside what democracy, the word, meant, and nobody had a clue. Nobody basically cares. Yeah.
But do they understand the difference between like having people in some building in some other city making decisions for them, or like being able to go to the local government office and, you know, having a voice of who gets to be
No.
there?
I think for a very long time we have become used to this idea that there are some people somewhere else taking decisions for our own good. And I personally think part of this is because of how much time Egypt was under the Ottoman rule. This is basically where most of our modern history was under the Ottoman rule, and there was a caliph somewhere else, even like geographically speaking, in Istanbul, and giving orders to emirs in different parts of the Ottoman Empire. And when we had our independence, it wasn't really an independence in the real sense of the word. So, and it was a monarchy as well, although there were attempts at reforming the system and turning it into a constitutional monarchy. But still, I think for most Egyptians, except for certain moments in our history when we were like revolted against the Brits or things like that, for most of the time it was some people somewhere else taking decisions on our behalf.
Mm-hmm. So it was never somewhere where you could go throw a stone at someone. Like in the States and in Canada, you can find out where they are. You go throw stones. It's part of your, well, you can say whatever you want.
We're a bit more pacifist than this.
Right, okay.
I have to say.
Yeah. So with, I mean, you've been in China for 2 years, 3 years.
More than 3 years now.
3 years.
Yeah.
Okay. I wonder if, with what you've just described about Egypt, and it's had such a troubled history, I wonder if China sort of looks at things like that, because Egypt, you know, it's one of its, you know, historical brethren from across the pond sort of thing. And like even India, I wonder if China looks at some of these countries and go, that's how they did it, we see how that turned out, we're going to try it this way instead. Like I want, do you see that at all, where they sort of have learned from other parts of the world and are applying
Not to
changes?
repeat our yeah, definitely, I think so. And I think I have to be sensitive here, but I wanna say
Yeah, you're leaving.
yeah, you're staying. Yeah. Yeah, I have to say that I think sometimes people kind of look at countries like us and say, no, this is not the right way to do things. We're gonna do things our own way. And sometimes I can't help but agree with that.
Well, you said something about the language there, where some people only know English, and then there's other, like the not as educated. Are they speaking Arabic, or are they speaking?
Yeah, Egyptian Arabic, and they probably can't even read classical Arabic or speak classical Arabic, or it's not classical, it's modern standard Arabic.
Modern Standard Arabic. You got 2 classifiers on that one.
Yes, yeah.
Why? China just went 1.
Why?
Simplified Chinese.
The situation is much more complex and interesting and rich in when it comes to Arabic. This is something I take so much pride in. Language.
Wow. I don't know anything about this. I mean, because I've been trying to study Chinese for the last 5, 6, lots of years.
Yeah.
And it's terrible. And I don't know if you ever played the video games when you were growing up, but
Not much, no.
the game that sort of like, when you got to the end, you could do the game again, but it would be harder.
Yeah.
That's what I find Chinese is. Like, so if I ever get to like HSK level 6, right, that's decently fluent, you're talking to educated people at that. That's simplified Chinese. But then there's traditional. and then there's classical. So it just goes on and on and on.
Okay.
Are you saying it's the same thing
So
with Arabic as well?
Okay, I think the situation is different. First, I want to answer your question about language in Egypt. So yeah, some people speak only English. Like sometimes I go to restaurants in in richer neighborhoods in Cairo, and maybe parents would be speaking Arabic to them to each other, but they speak only English to their kids.
Mm-hmm.
And some people don't get enough education at all, and maybe they're even illiterate. Actually, Egypt still has a lot of illiteracy. So yeah, when it comes to Arabic, in terms of like the language we speak in Egypt, you got classical Arabic, which is the language in which the Quran was revealed or was written, and in which most of the poetry in the Arabian Peninsula was written in as well. And it's rather difficult now for people to understand. And I think if it weren't for the Quran, most people would have just forgotten about it.
Really?
So I think it's only
So there's a binding force behind that book.
Yeah.
Right.
So people would still be able to understand at least the gist if they weren't very well educated of the verses in the Quran. But since they have to use it for rituals, for prayers and things like that, it's still alive. It's not dead like Latin, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I think if it weren't for the Quran, classical Arabic would have faced the same fate as Latin,
Mm-hmm.
which is basically it's a dead language.
Well, the Pope, in Vatican, they still use it though, and for all official ceremonies, it's all Latin.
In the Catholic Church.
Yeah. But I mean, you go to a local church in the States, it's English.
It's English, yeah. So yeah, that's as far as classical Arabic is concerned. When it comes to Arabic now, you got basically spoken Arabic dialects, which are very different from one country, from one Arab country to another. And you've got modern standard Arabic, which is a form of written and spoken Arabic, which I think is common. It's like a lingua franca of all Arab countries. So this is, for example, what the UN recognizes as Arabic.
Mm-hmm.
It's a rather simplified form, simplified not in the same sense as simplified Chinese compared to traditional Chinese, but simplified in terms of complexity of vocabulary and even the grammatical structures. But it sounds more formal. This is what we study in school. This is what TV anchors use for the news, newspapers, most literature, things like that. Dialects in the Arab world are so different, and there is variations in intelligibility. For example, Egyptian Arabic, for historical reasons and for the influence of Egypt in the media historically, most movies were made in Egypt, in Cairo,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the first half of the 20th century, before the discovery of oil in the Gulf area and the rise in influence of the Gulf countries. So Egyptian Arabic is almost understood by every single person in the Arab world. And some nationalists now in different Arab countries claim that their own dialects are just a mix of the original languages that people in those countries spoke before Islam and before the Arab conquest or invasion or whatever you want to call it. So a mix of their native languages and Arabic, so they are not Arabic in their own right, but it's their own language, so they want to claim it back. And now nationalists in Egypt say that Egyptian Arabic is Masri, it's Egyptian, and they start, there's now a whole portal on Wikipedia, articles written in Egyptian Arabic, there's literature being written in Egyptian Arabic, and things like that. And I think it's the same case in countries like Morocco and Algeria. Yeah, people want to. It's this rise of populism and nationalism in a lot of countries. So,
but if someone were to learn, like if I were to learn modern standard Arabic, and okay, after Chinese, and would people in Egypt, Morocco, Algeria, Canada, would they, or Australia, would they be able to understand me? Like, is it that universal? Like, what simplified Mandarin aims to that sort of like it wanted like China, as we know it geographically, they wanted one language that could be spoken amongst all of the people within that area. Is that sort of what modern standard Arabic is?
Yeah, but I'm not sure if it was politically motivated, but I think this is how things worked eventually. Yes, so when non-native or like Arabic learners want to learn Arabic, they usually, the right approach now, or the most common approach now, is to learn modern standard Arabic plus one dialect, because otherwise it would be too difficult. So sometimes, if you don't know which dialect would be most useful for you in your career, for example, people opt for Egyptian Arabic, again because of how easy it is to be understood by everybody else.
So you're considering Egyptian Arabic to be a dialect? What about within Egypt? Like, you land in Cairo, do you just go live in the slums, or where are you learning this dialect?
There are books for Egyptian Arabic as well, so
right.
Like if you want to learn. And yeah, this is what most people do, but the thing is, if you only speak modern standard Arabic and go speak to someone on the streets of Cairo, people will either laugh at you, yes, because
They probably will.
Yeah.
Why do you sound like a textbook?
Exactly. That's how a speaker of modern standard Arabic would sound, especially on the streets of a country like Egypt, where people are so humorous. That's one way of putting it. Yeah, so yeah, that's how it works now. So if, for example, if you know for sure that you're going to live in the Levant, then you learn modern standard Arabic, and then the Levantine dialect of Syria and Lebanon and Palestine and Jordan. If you know that for sure you're going to get a job in somewhere in the Maghreb area, in the Morocco, and so you learn that accent and so on. And there are very interesting influences of the native languages in certain countries, like barbarian language, like the language of the Berbers in the western, in the like old countries to the west of Egypt, Libya, Tunisia. Also the French influence from the French occupation of those countries as well means that there's a lot of French words, French vocabulary, and even an influence on how certain sounds are pronounced to this day. Yeah, and Egypt has a very interesting mix of vocabulary from all sorts of languages, because we had communities from a lot of European countries, so we still have words from Italian, from Greek, from French, from English now, and words from our own language, Coptic language, or you might say ancient Egyptian language. Even the syntax, which is quite interesting, and this is why some people argue that Egyptian Arabic is a language in its own right, because even the syntax and the structure has been heavily influenced by ancient Egyptian language. One example, which might be very interesting, is that modern standard Arabic, just like English, uses one word to negate a sentence, whereas Egyptian Arabic uses two words, just like French, ne pas, something like that, something similar. So it is a huge difference.
Wow. So with all of this, I mean, how long does it take to learn? I want to say Arabic, but it doesn't sound like that's the right classifier. Arabics. I mean, how long would it take someone, in terms of kids, I mean, they're learning this in school. When does someone become proficient in the Arab?
They never reach this level, and I think it's because of the lack of need to use modern standard Arabic. Why would you need it? You don't need it. Now, most people aim to work in multinational companies, so they better spend more time learning English or another foreign language. So basically most people just study this because they have to study this. And if they're not very interested in like literature or in reading textbooks for academic studies later, they won't bother. And that's why spelling is among young people in particular is horrible. It's a plague. Yeah, so bad. It pisses me off because I'm quite.
You sound like you're getting old.
Yeah, I was thinking today about that as well.
I mean, these kids don't know how to spell anymore. They're not saying the words right anymore.
I am getting old, yeah.
Well, I mean, it happens, and you sort of get solidified or fossilized, I think, is the English terminology for it. But
So how long does it take to learn Arabic?
yeah,
That was the
because
question.
Chinese, they say, I don't even know, it's 200, 300 hours. No, sorry, that's a lot of hours
Yeah.
to get to
3,000?
HSK. It's, to get to HSK 6. It seems very, classroom hours though, classroom contact hours, so that's what they classify. But is there a sort of,
A similar figure?
yeah,
in
like
Arabic?
if I at least put in the base minimum effort,
Yeah.
what level of Arabic could I get in like a couple of years?
Yeah. First, I think you know that Chinese and Arabic kind of compete for the most difficult language for non-native speakers to learn. So, like when Google this, for example, sometimes in one survey Arabic tops the list, and sometimes it's Chinese. So they compete for that, and there are reasons. So, like, I think it's a nightmare to get hold of the hang of characters in Chinese. This is super easy. Like, I can sit with you here for half an hour and you'll be able to read Arabic because it's just an alphabet, just like English.
30 minutes to get the Arabic
Okay.
challenge.
A bit of an exaggeration, I'm sorry. Actually, tomorrow I'm meeting a Chinese friend who's very interested in learning Arabic, and I've got a plan for how I'm going to teach him that. And I think for someone who's good at someone who's got like a knack for learning languages, it shouldn't take a long time. It could be one class or
I
something.
downloaded the Duolingo Arabic. I mean, the only one I remember is Dood. D-O-O-D. That's the
Yeah.
only word letter I
Maybe
remember.
because it's similar to D-U-D-E.
Yes, and it's pretty much. But there was a bunch of others. I mean, I don't remember.
Yeah.
It was just out of interest. I was looking at it.
But I would still argue that it's far easier than Chinese characters. Whereas I understand I'm not very good at Chinese, but I understand that Chinese grammar is so straightforward, so
They
simple.
say that.
No?
They say that.
Okay.
Boy, they say that very clearly. Don't. Oh, Chinese grammar is just like English. No, it's not. It is not just like English.
If you think so, then I think you'd find it really difficult to get
yeah.
Arabic grammar because it's in a league of its own.
Right.
So
Well,
complicated.
they equate the whole subject verb object structure as being similar, the same. I'm going, yes, but the way that you put all your words together and your timestamps are a lot different than how
Yeah.
English does it. Now that's to be expected in going across languages. But then how different? I mean, when you say Arabic grammar is in a league of its own, in what way?
In what way? Okay. So first, it's I'm not sure if this is the right linguistic term. It's dative.
Okay.
So that means just like Latin and I think German as well. The word changes form depending on its on where it is in the sentence.
You mean
and
inflected language?
Yes, it
Where
is.
the endings change.
Yes, exactly.
Depending where it is, who it is, what it is, how it is
Yes.
being used.
Yeah.
Okay, that's like Latin.
So this is one thing. Conjugation is a nightmare, I have to say, because there's so many different tenses, and you don't have singular and plural. You have single, dual, and plural.
Right,
as
so
well.
that's like Greek and...
Yeah, and you have, of course, masculine and feminine for everything, for every single thing of these.
Yes.
Also, we're pretty playful when it comes to how we structure sentences. We like to play with the order a lot. Sometimes it can be a nightmare or very super difficult to understand where the sentence starts and where it ends. For especially people who speak European languages as a like L1 or like the first language, it's to a great extent you can expect where the sentence starts, subject, verb, object most of the time. You know, we like to play a lot with the order in Arabic.
Okay, so I'm just getting this image of people just starting a sentence midway,
Yeah.
and you're like, were we talking? I don't
Yeah.
remember the introductory.
We can do these things, and actually there are remnants of this even in modern English, because poetry is like that, and I think in most languages.
I'm not sure if most people would suggest that you start reading poetry to learn English.
Yeah.
No, maybe hip hop or rap, like songs, maybe, but that's different
But not
argument whether
poetry,
that's
yeah.
poetry. Wow.
Yeah, English poetry is difficult.
So then how long was it going to take to learn Arabic? How many years?
I don't have an answer.
Right.
But people take very long time. Sometimes they're motivated because they are converts to Islam.
Mhm.
They are very motivated, so it takes them much less than other people.
Well, how long would they take? If someone like is in order to marry a Muslim girl, you have to convert, or she has to convert to your religion, whichever. But no.
Okay, this is very interesting. I guess it will provoke some feminists here.
Catholic Church won't marry won't marry across religions like that.
Yeah.
No, they.
So a Muslim man can marry either a Muslim, Christian, or Jewish woman, but a Muslim woman can only marry a Muslim man.
Oh wow! Oh yeah, that's gonna be clipped. I know. Oh boy. Okay, yeah, I don't know this. I mean, but I'm guessing this is one of the big modern debates
Yeah,
raging.
I don't think people will be happy to hear that. Yeah.
Gee. Okay. Righto. Okay. So the
But
motivated.
I'm not criticizing because I'm a believer, and yeah, I don't question that.
So the motivated person going into marriage, how long would it take him to get passable?
Yeah, a work.
Making the father-in-law believe that they actually know something. Wow, that long? Okay. Wow.
No, I don't have an answer. I would just be making up an answer here. But I guess not less than a year of being in an Arabic speaking country and practicing with their potential partner. Yeah.
Did you make a go of trying to learn Mandarin Chinese while you were here?
Yeah, I had a go at that.
How well did it go?
Badly. So I'm leaving China, and I sometimes when I ask for the bill in a restaurant, I can't even understand the numbers. That's how bad my Chinese is. There are reasons for that. Would you like to?
How many?
Hear the reason? A lot. I was thinking about that yesterday because I'm leaving, and it's dawning upon me these days that I am leaving. So I'm reflecting on a lot of things, and one of them is language, like Chinese. So. Yeah, I would think there are a lot of reasons why this is the case.
Mm-hmm. So,
how many would you like to hear?
Well, how many would there be? I mean, are you putting up blockade against the language? I mean, is it a cultural thing? Is it a linguistic thing?
No.
Is it like I just can't do this anymore?
First,
I'm leaving. It doesn't matter. 10 days is done. Right?
Maybe it is maybe because I never saw myself living here for a long time. It was always like, okay, I'm just gonna be here for a year. Oh, okay, I'm going to renew this contract. So I never saw myself living here or having a girlfriend here or anything like that. So, so this is one reason. The other reason is it's a personal reason. I'm more of a perfectionist.
Mm-hmm.
So if I know that I'm not going to learn Chinese as it should be learned, and if I'm not going to put in the effort and the time and everything to master Chinese by the time I'm supposed to leave, I wouldn't actually just be happy with ni hao and xie and numbers. This is something that I don't like about myself, but it's the case for me. Another reason is...
My only response to that would be then, what else were you doing with the 16 hours of your day? I mean, you work for 8, you had lots of time. I mean, you want to be a perfectionist about the Mandarin language. That's a language that requires a lot of perfectionism.
Yeah, so maybe I didn't have the time for that. I was learning French as well. It took me a year, the COVID year where I was stuck in Egypt, to learn French. So yeah, this is actually a testament to how good I am at learning languages. It took me less than 6 months to go from B1 to C1, and I did a test just like IELTS but for French. I could have done that for Chinese, but I didn't have the motivation, I guess.
Yeah.
Also, when I tried learning Chinese, I guess we just didn't click. I was put off by the tones, and I found them extremely difficult to get. And I figured out that I don't have an ear for tones. I thought at one point I thought I was tone deaf, which I think I'm not, but that's how bad I was at recognizing, identifying tones and trying to produce them. It was so difficult for me, and I was put off by that.
As much as I have hit this impressive number of HSK 5 Blue Book studies and stuff like that, and people are like, oh wow, that's high level. I'm like, yeah, first of all, it's terrible. I don't know what half the people say most time. I failed my test, actually. I took it in July. I got 46%. Horrible. But it was right on point with all the practice tests I was doing. And so I knew going into it that it wasn't going to be like a stellar turnout. But and this might be, you could argue that this is why my tones are crap and no one understands what I'm saying, but I have heard that this tone argument so many times, your tones are off, but then you hear how other people speak and go, how is that any tonally accurate than what I just said? And you can make the argument, well, they said it this way. I go, I think a lot of it has to do with context. You have to set up the context, and one of the things that you have to be able to do is to go, well, the意思是, my meaning is, and then explain it again. You hear the natives doing it all the time. They just explain the same thing 3 times. I don't think they understand either. That's just my that's my observation. There seems to be a lot of talking for a very simple point. That's it. But it's not just tones. I mean, I think it's also, well, what do you mean by you want boiled water? Do you want boiled water that was boiled before? Or do you want boiled water that's fresh water from, and you're going, boiled water would be fine, but the way that you say it is different.
It's quite interesting. Yeah.
Well, is it? Or is it a needless complication of the language that can put off people from learning it?
You just added one more reason to my list, basically. Yeah, that's what you just did now.
Well, the tones, I think everybody a lot of people are put off by the tones, but a lot of it, I think, comes down to, you do have to, a lot of repetition, and then you have to give yourself context. Like you have to, when you are speaking to someone, you have to give them that context of what you mean.
Some of our colleagues said the same thing to me. Sometimes if you are in a restaurant looking at the menu, so you kind of set the context here, so it should make things easier for native speakers to understand you. Also, don't forget about that with the development of technology, you don't need much Chinese. So for example, for me personally...
But that's not the point. The point is to learn the language, not to get around it. I understand, I see what you mean.
Yeah, but it kind of robs you of motivation as well. Like, I've got my scripted scenario for taking a cab. Like, you got DD, and DD is in English. You get in, the driver asks you to confirm the last 4 digits of your phone, and you go like, wait, and then...
But do you understand those last 4 digits? Or did you say?
Yeah. I learned them by heart now.
Sure.
And I know that this is the right cab, so...
I looked at the numbers right. Yeah.
So we don't exchange a word, you just keep looking at your phone, and then you get to your destination, you pay on your app,
WeChat,
and you go like 谢谢师傅再见, and that's about it.
Right. Funny that you say that the technology has demotivated you, because I find it's actually making it a lot easier, horribly easier. I mean,
to learn Chinese, you mean?
Yeah, because I remember one time, in my first couple of years here, when I came to China, I did not want to learn Chinese. I mean, I was tired of learning languages, trying to learn a language of a new place that I moved to, and I'm like, I'm done. I tap out. I'll learn the token amount. That was it. That was what I told myself. And I remember kind of half committing to it in my second year, and I went to buy a newspaper, and I got a dictionary, and I posted a picture on WeChat, and my students laughed. And they're like, you cannot do that. It will not happen. Good luck, it just won't happen. And they're right, because to get a paper dictionary and the newspaper and try to make sense of them, it wasn't going to happen. I remember getting, asking another foreigner who was high level as well, and he was like, yeah, there is an order to the dictionary, but you have to know the order in order to figure out how everything is organized.
It's like Arabic.
Yeah, and so with Chinese, I mean, it just became one of these things where the technology, I think, made it a lot easier. And I remember some of our colleagues asking me why I was practicing my writing, because I used to do this when we had trips and stuff like that. I would just sit there and write Chinese, and I added up how long I wrote every day. It was like an hour, 2 hours a day I was writing Chinese characters. And the only reason why is because I needed to get the dictionary to recognize my writing. And then once I could do that, all of a sudden I could look at a sign, write in the characters, find the meaning and the tones and everything. It was like, but you had to spend the time learning how to write the characters so the dictionary understood you. Forget the rest of the people. I'll worry about them later. If the dictionary could understand me, I was progressing at least. So with that, I mean, I found technology so much better.
Yeah, if you want to learn the language, I mean, yeah. And you got a lot of apps now. Not only Duolingo, there's also Super Monkey.
I don't use that. I use Pleco and Anki Droid.
Okay.
That's it. I've found to simplify my whole study. I have some flashcards. There's a box over there that I got because the guy who left, he's like, yeah, they helped me. And those are good because it gets me away from the distractions of the cell phone sometimes. But I think without electronic dictionary being able to write in the characters,
Awesome, right?
I think I'd be like you, be like, that's it, no, tapping out, done. I'm not dealing with this. No, not at all. So, I don't know. In terms of, so you've been here for 3 years. But, okay, so when did you get here?
So that was March 2019. Yeah.
And then you were back in Egypt for a year, and then you came back?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, the first time I came to China was for 1 month in August 2018.
Right.
I was doing a short-term job here, and that's how I fell in love with the country, or at least with Beijing, because of the convenience. So yeah, that was 2018, and then I came here as a full-timer in 2019.
So what attracted you? You say you fell in love with Beijing. That's a...
No, I think that was, yeah, that was a bit of an exaggeration. I love the country, but not in the not to the extent of falling in love. Remember, I come from Egypt. Yeah, I think I made this clear. So I come from Egypt, and living in Egypt's not easy. It's most cities, even Cairo. I mean, even the capital. Most cities are chaotic, noisy, polluted.
Welcome to Beijing. No, not the same.
You come from Canada.
You're right. You're
yeah,
right. It's green. Yeah. It's blue skies. It's people
yes.
say hi to you, and you don't know them. You're like,
no, Egypt is not like that. So definitely, and I lived in Bahrain for a year before that, and both cultures are similar. Of course, Bahrain is much more developed, at least in terms of the infrastructure and things like that. But for me, China was a huge step up from everything else.
Wow.
The fact that there are bicycle lanes, and that there are shared bikes, and that there is very good enforcement of public order and in the streets, at least.
You're the first one to say that. Wow.
Yeah, everything is relative, right? So when you talk to someone who comes from Egypt, so
I guess so.
China is like a dream come true. It's like paradise on earth. That's what I tell my mother on the phone most of the time.
Well, even with but with the share bikes, and I'll grant the country that, and they've done a very good job with the subway systems, shared bikes, and making it national. Because I don't know about in Egypt, if they ever tried that in Canada, they tried the shared bike system, and every city had a different shared bike, and you're going, now I got to register and it doesn't work, and my data's out, and it's and my data doesn't go across provinces, and I'm just gonna walk, get a cab or something like that. But so it was the order that attracted you to
the order, the convenience. When I say convenience, what pops up in my mind is Taobao.
Yeah. Well, you can buy anything and have it shipped, but Beijing's unique for that because it's where everything comes anyway.
Yeah. Even simple things such as calling a Didi, for example. We have Uber in Egypt, but it never works as seamlessly as Didi does here. What else? The job itself, it was a lucrative job, and there were a lot of perks to it. Anything else?
What about traveling? Did you get to travel the country much as well? Did you get out of Beijing?
Only with my for work basically. And even when I did that, I wasn't much of an explorer. So maybe the hotel where I stayed, and maybe a little bit of the neighborhood around in where the hotel is.
It's tough though being a working traveler. I think people make it out to be this great thing, but then it's you have to understand you work and then you travel, and then usually when you're traveling there's 2 days that are written off, getting in and getting out, and then so at the end of the workday you basically just want to go eat, and if you don't know where you are, it's very difficult to sort of arrange all this and then enjoy the sites that all close at 4:30 or 5 o'clock anyway.
So now I haven't done much traveling, and I guess in this regard I'm not a real expat because I didn't learn the language. I didn't travel around.
I think you're a true expat that way. I mean, you didn't learn the language. You didn't travel very much. You've been eating foreign food the entire time. I mean, and you're leaving after 3 years.
That's what expats do.
Isn't that what they do?
But most expats I know are more more invested in the culture here. They eat more Chinese food. They at least speak some Chinese. They have traveled around the country, whereas I haven't. Maybe I hang out with the wrong kind of expats.
I think it also depends on how long they've been here. Like one of my motivating goals for Chinese was not to be that foreigner who doesn't know Chinese after being here for so long.
Not to be me.
Well, 3 years. I mean, you're still a junior. People look at my 6 or 8. I can't remember, 8 years, whatever it is, and they would look. Some people would look at that and go, "That's that's a decent amount of time," but it's like not as long as some other people have been here. I almost find it kind of interesting to be one of these people who seems to have nowhere else to go. You have somewhere else to go. This is great. Awesome. Kudos to you, sir. I have nowhere else to go. If it's not in China, I'd go back to Canada and then do what? Then I mean, so it's like I'm here, I'm employed, got the podcast,
Well, you're a man of many talents. You're skillful. I'm sure you'll have something to do in Canada.
Would it pay? Would it be as lucrative?
That's
Would it
where it
be,
gets trickier.
and does it? And this is something that I think about because the people who are leaving a lot of them are doing the same job. They're just going back and doing it in the homeland rather than being here. But a lot of them are taking families along with them as well, which I find actually kind of surprising and a bit shocking that the number of men who've been here for a long time, married with children, are now leaving. Like that's a flag. That's like, wow, this country has tapped out a lot of long-standing people who were like, they like Chinese food, they know some of the language, they seem to be sort of ingrained in it, and that seems to be coming to an end.
I have a friend who says that China is looking for a different kind of expat. People who work in STEM rather than people who work in the ESL industry, for example. And maybe that's why, I don't know, maybe just I don't know, a side effect of the COVID measures and everything happening.
The ESL, but everybody was ESL, and some of those STEM could be ESL. They could just change their major. I mean, there were people who graduated with
Degrees and
actual degrees in quotation marks who could do other things, but they chose to go travel. Some people, yeah, I think you're also right. Some of the people a large portion of the ESL teachers, I mean, they were here because it was the easiest job to get. So you can't blame them. I mean, and I think
demand for them.
Demand for it, and I think China was looking at it, going, you're spending how much? We're paying these teachers how much to teach our kids. Our students are going overseas. They're coming back. They're educated. They know English. Why are we paying such exorbitant fees, or why are the families here paying such exorbitant fees for teaching this language that, in theory, we should be learning in our public school system as part of like a core curriculum sort of thing? So I understand how they kind of they clamped down on the education because it was but a lot of those schools that got shut down and got targeted, they were taking advantage of the situation. Like they were offering financing terms and stuff like that. It was like buying a house at the height of the 2009 crash. You're never going to pay that off. It's never going to return any value to you. So, and I wonder if that was sort of one of the things that there's like, this isn't sustainable. Let's cut it down already.
I don't think it was done on purpose, though. Yeah.
What do you wish you would have been able to do more? Like, would you want to stay in China more if you given sort of better circumstances? Or
yeah, I think I had to choose a destination where I could just like live the rest of my life and get the nationality at some point. I think if China offered that, I would have stayed.
What about the permanent resident or permanent the green card? That not good enough?
I'm not eligible for that anymore. I don't make enough. I don't pay enough taxes now since I don't make enough.
You could find a job that did it. I don't know. I mean, there in theory you could do it. You're right. So then you're leaving. Anything else that you'd want to have done that you haven't had a chance to do?
Learning Chinese, definitely.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Smaller targets.
Yeah, smaller. Okay. More traveling. Okay, such an expat thing to say. Disneyland in Shanghai.
Really?
Can't go now. I don't want to risk it. So no Disneyland Shanghai for me. Anything else? More hiking. Yeah, more communion with nature because I don't have much of that in Egypt. At least like green landscapes. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Wow. Okay. And I mean, in terms of like you're taking off. You said you seem to be concerned about like having a nationality, but Egyptian nationality. You've lived in several parts of the world. I mean, what is making you sort of leave because of nationality?
Yeah. Um,
Does Egypt respect two passports, dual passports? Like China doesn't.
Yeah,
Okay.
Egypt is happy with that. If anything, they want as many people as possible
Real okay.
to go out and get passports and live abroad because they bring in, most of the time, hard currency and at the same time they lessen the burden on the government to provide. Why am I looking for a passport? First, I want to live in a welfare state where I pay taxes and get services in return, and where I know that I be looked after in my senior years, so to speak. So this is one reason. The other reason is I can't live in Egypt because of everything. It's very challenging. The moment you step out of your home, you feel like the world is trying as much as possible to challenge you.
Really?
I feel like we're not working together towards one goal, and I feel like in China it's different. I feel like everybody's trying to help me as much as possible to reach my goals, to even do the most basic of tasks, daily tasks that I need to do. So I don't like that in Egypt. I feel suffocated in Egypt. Not because of like religious reasons, cultural reasons, it's just because it's difficult. Day-to-day life is difficult. Like while I was stuck in Egypt, I know it's a bit funny, but I had to sleep with those earmuffs, like huge earmuffs that they wear in airports.
Yeah.
To sleep. Imagine like I couldn't
It was that noisy.
Yeah, it was that noisy, and there's no public order whatsoever, at least in my city, and I guess in most cities. People like us, middle-class families, are being crushed right now. The gap between classes is just horrible, and there's no enough respect for the law. I'm not sure if you heard about that. BBC Arabic very recently made an investigation into how hijabis, people who wear hijab, and you'd assume like these would be the majority, and they are the majority, but they look down upon because they are the majority, they are the less well-off people. So now they are being discriminated against if they want to go to fancy restaurants, or if they want to have a swim in a swimming pool and things like that. And of course this goes against the law, goes against the constitution, but not enough is being done to tackle such a problem, for example. And same goes for a lot of things. I feel like if I want to challenge someone who wronged me, I can't do that. So it's always like, yeah, we're always like want to.
Seems like the wild west. I mean, you can do anything you want as long as you have the money.
I'm such a bad ambassador for my country.
Yeah, well, no, you're selling it very well. I mean, Egypt is one of the places I want to go. I know a lot of people who've traveled there, but everybody. I think you even said this at some point. Like I was talking about the pyramids, and everyone who goes, they're like, yeah, you get the picture, while you're getting ripped off by everybody around you, and you're getting hassled constantly.
I think the government right now, whether I agree with the government or whether I'm in favor of the government or not, is doing a lot to tackle such problems. They are they're very deeply entrenched in people now, especially like the poorer people who need to harass tourists to get their money. Things are changing a little bit, but then we get hit by COVID and by the aftermath or the after effects of the Ukrainian war, and we just can't get the economy to pick up again, so people are back to like harassing tourists. Yeah, but I think as a tourist you can be in this bubble, especially if you're being looked after by a good travel agent like Thomas Cook or whatever. Something like that. You can be in this bubble.
They went bankrupt, didn't they?
Really? Okay.
I think so. Yeah, they're done.
So yeah,
I'm pretty sure. I can't remember.
yeah, you're right. Yes, yeah, 2018, I guess.
Yeah, a couple of years ago because
I'm getting old. I am getting old. I live in the past now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Especially if you want to go to a resort town along the Red Sea, for example. You can do such things as a tourist, but maybe living as an Egyptian in Egypt, at least for people like me in my socioeconomic class, is difficult.
Our good friend Ahmed Excellence. He's my barber. I haven't gone to him recently because I'm growing this out at the moment.
Doing a very good job.
Well, he doesn't message me, but whenever I message him like it's haircut, he's like, yeah, it's about time, you know. But he was saying, because I've talked to him about he's Egyptian as well, and he was explaining how life in Egypt is and how the difference is for guys like him and then people like me if I were to go there to teach English, because I have seen, I remember seeing, especially 10 years ago, Egypt was a destination for ESL teaching. It paid decently well. And there's at least one person I know who, maybe a few, who went there and they taught our provincial curriculum in Egypt. Like that seemed to be a thing where they borrow like a Canadian province's
all sorts of education.
Right, and so and then
British, Canadian, French, you name it. Yeah.
Right. And he said something that actually struck me, and you don't appreciate it in China a lot of times, because especially here in Beijing, is that he was like, if you're walking down the street in Egypt as an Egyptian, you get stopped and you get hassled by the police. They ask you for your documents, they ask you where you're going, what are you doing, and then maybe a little of a payment to keep you going, so like on the way. But if it's me, you know, it's not the police doing that. The touts, the hawkers might try to get me, but then if I make a stink to them, to the police about them, then the police remove them, and I'm allowed on my way, sort of thing. Yeah. So I mean, is it in China? We don't. I guess for all the things that's said about this country, I don't know if we get hassled. Like there is, I remember other people saying that China used to make it very easy for foreigners to live here. I don't know if I would agree with that China wants a different type of expat. They might are trying to reposition themselves, but I would almost say that they want to consolidate their gains, like what they've had so far, that they're building. They do want people to remember, you know, this is the homeland, and that just because you're over there, I mean, don't forget that this sort of made it happen, that you were able to go over there, sort of thing. But yeah, I don't know. Egypt, you're painting a very dirty picture of it, but at the same time, I'm like, that picture.
Sorry, my fellow Egyptians.
It makes me kind of go, no, that sounds like a very good language to go learn. Arabic. Let's go sit in the slum for a couple of years and learn some language. Why not?
There are actually a lot of foreigners, or at least quite a few, who go there and just fall in love. They get like enchanted by Egypt and never want to go, never want to leave. There are a lot of people like that.
How many of them have lived somewhere else?
I would say many, because and you would come from like European countries. They have lived good lives before Egypt, but for whatever reason they again get enchanted by everything in Egypt and decide to live. And I also want to say that maybe it is me, because I can see that my parents, for example, lived in Egypt happily. A lot of my friends can survive and they're doing a good job of surviving there. Maybe it is me, maybe I have become a bit too westernized, a bit like maybe my standards are high. Maybe it is me. Yeah.
Well, our good friend Ahmed also said that, I remember during COVID I went there for a haircut, and he was commenting that I was asking him how business was here in China. He's like, yeah, it's fine, you know, no education, got a job, and I'm working. Friends home, educated, no job, no income.
I assume that this is his English, how good his English is, right?
Well, there are times when I wonder if he's understanding everything I say, but he knows enough. I mean, we have conversations all the time.
But he's right about the police. I feel like here, the police is a civil force that is there to help me.
Well, they don't have guns here. They have batons, that's it. And if they see a foreigner, they're like, I don't know English, I'm not dealing with this, you deal with it.
Sometimes they even say hi or like salute you.
Which is so weird. Like, you're supposed to be doing your job, not being a friend right now.
Yeah. I find that cute.
It is, and you kind of understand, like on the billboards when they paint they make the cartoon character police and the fire people, like that sounds so cute. Look at that.
Oh.
You don't get that in Canada. That's no more. You're gonna have some serious looking guy, some serious looking woman who's has a gun. They're gonna show all the weaponry that they have. It's not gonna be like cute little bubble faces and stuff like that.
There is still corruption in the police department in Egypt, and remember, like the revolution was against that. So it was ignited by a victim of torture in a police station who was beaten to death. So the police brutality is something in Egypt, and I personally am afraid of the police. I don't want to have anything to do with the police, even if I have like an errand, like some paperwork I need to get in the police station, like an uncriminal record. I make sure that I'm
You think that's going to change in Canada?
I want to think that yes.
Well, that's a good question. I don't like dealing with police either, but I've traveled to enough places that I'm like, I don't want to deal with the police because who knows what's going to happen. I don't like to deal with a lot of authorities because I'm like, no one really knows what's going on. And I don't blame them. They're just doing their job. I mean,
if you think about when we go to renew our residence permit at the PSP.
Oh, seamless, isn't it?
Not efficient and everything, but people are also nice. They don't see themselves as like above the law. They are there to what's the word, to enforce the law, so to speak, or to execute it. So I don't
know. I got a few looks this year with my beard. They were looking at me going, where are you from? Like,
Afghanistan.
Doesn't matter where I'm from.
Allahu Akbar.
Yeah, no, it's very, they do have a very good order here. I wouldn't deal with the cops here just because it's like, they're not going to do anything. I mean, foreigner talking about, whatever problem they have, I mean, unless the cops see that they can actually deal with that situation right now, it's not going to get taken care of, and it doesn't matter, so...
So Ahmed Excellence is right. Excellence. that's how we say it in Arabic. I think it's from French, so excellence and then excellence.
Is that how we call? I call them Ahmed Excellence, but you're like, no, it's Excellence.
Yeah, I think it's because it's a French word in Arabic, modern like Egyptian Arabic. So Ahmed Excellence.
Right, and he does. He's actually a little bit disappointed. So when I come in, he's like, okay, it's like a standard haircut. Right, I'm so boring with my facial hair and my haircut, but I see the pictures that he does, and he really goes to town on some of these guys. Like he's cutting designs into their haircuts and everything.
Sometimes they even like draw pyramids with the trimmer or whatever.
No, I won't. I'm like I don't even let him put wax in my hair. I'm like, nah, I don't need it. I'm just gonna put a toque on anyway, so just go. It doesn't matter. He's like, all right.
Very basic.
Yeah, very, very, very simple. That's the way I like it. But China hasn't been just not learning Chinese and wistfully missing about Egypt. I mean, you've done other things here as well, right? You've been ingratiated in the writing community and some cultural aspects.
Yeah, that's why I feel like my experience in China has been really rich. I'm leaving with a lot to be grateful for, I have to say. So China gave me the opportunity to write in English for Beijing Review. That's where I published like I think 4 or 5 articles. I love that, and I'm so proud of this, I have to say, because when I first applied to do CELTA, which is a TEFL certificate, I got rejected the first time because of how bad my writing was. We didn't actually do a lot of writing in school. So I just, the way I wrote English was just like we spoke it, like it was like a transcript of what I thought, no structure, no anything. So I spent a lot of time working on my writing, and there's a friend of mine who actually helped me a lot. And the fact that I reached a point where my writing is even better than my speaking in English, it's such a source of it's a huge achievement. It's something I take so much pride in, and it's such a weird thing to say, but I love my writing. Like, I don't like my speaking. I still think I'm a little bit insecure about my speaking in general, in both Arabic and English. But when it comes to writing, I like the way I write now. yeah, and I look back at the articles I've written, and I think they were a good way of portraying my culture, not in this way, but in a more flowery way, and drawing parallels between the Chinese culture and Egyptian culture. So yeah, I'm happy with what I did in this regard.
Were you just writing for Beijing Review, or were you writing for other?
No, only Beijing Review. I have a blog, but in Arabic.
Okay.
And I co-published a book with some Arabic language bloggers back home after the revolution 2013. It was like a competition. People voted for the best blog posts back in 2013 again, and one of my posts made it to the book.
What was that about?
It was like a letter to an imaginary friend, something like that. Yeah.
Right.
And for some time I published regularly on Facebook posts that got many likes, but I no longer do that now. Yeah, I like putting my thoughts in writing on
Is it
paper.
easier to write in Arabic or English?
I think for me, I will always be more fluent writing-wise in Arabic. So there will be a smoother flow. But I think I have learned a lot about writing as a craft, as a skill, while writing in English.
Why is that?
Why is that? That's a very good question. Yeah.
I think there's more sources available in English.
This could be one reason, but I also attribute this to the fact that writing and written communication was for a longer period of time in Western cultures such an important form of communication, whereas our tradition, our history is more oral,
Mhm.
so to speak. So during the time when people in the West wrote letters to each other, just like you see in period dramas like Downton Abbey, this was a form of communication. People wrote letters to each other. We didn't do that for enough time, at least. It was more oral. So I think writing in Arabic was never as well developed as it is in European languages, even when it comes to things such as using sentences, using punctuation. We borrowed the punctuation from European languages. So there's a lot of tendency in Arabic to use flowery language, lots of synonyms, not enough focus on precision and on being succinct, to the point. I think I learned all of this from English, and the fact that I work in language assessment in English, having to grade or to mark papers, writing papers, I think gave me much more clarity when I'm writing in English than when I do in Arabic.
Of what not to do.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, which is of what not to do and what to avoid.
How many times do you need to see what not to do before you're like, okay, learn that.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. The English language, I guess, is a lot more succinct. Now, I thought like Chinese can be very flowery in times because they all speak in idioms. Like they have these 4 or 6 character sayings, and it's supposed to explain away a whole situation. Does Arabic have the same sort of thing where it's very reliant on, like, you have to understand the whole context behind what's being said in order to appreciate the story or what's being written?
To an extent, and I think this has to do with a political, cultural milieu.
Mm-hmm. In Egypt.
And in China.
And in China,
this
yeah.
is where they are similar. Sometimes I look at like slogans from the hardcore communist era in China, and I see there is a lot of similarities in the language that was used under Nasser, for example, the first Egyptian president after the revolution military coup of 1952. So I feel like Arabic has maintained this, and Chinese as well. So yeah, flowery language as in lots of idioms, yes, we do that. We borrowed that from Arabic poetry. So, and Egyptian Arabic is very visual like that. So, like there's a lot of images, and the language is more or less like scripted. Like people, students in schools, children learn a lot of those stock sentences that phrases that they will keep using, and most of them have political connotations. They glorify the
Motherland.
leader, yeah, motherland,
Right.
things like that, yeah.
So you published a book now. It was one
Co-authored.
co-authored. Are you working on anything else like that? Like especially now that you're leaving China, 3 years. I mean, people have written books about shorter time periods.
No, about China, no. The only project that I wanna keep working on, or like continue to work on, is a novel that I started when I was doing a course in creative writing workshop, or a course, and I've never really got down to writing it. So it was only the idea. I wrote like the summary on a piece of paper, but I never really got down to finishing it. I'd like to do that in the future.
Well, you have lots of time now, right? You're jobless.
Yeah, but I need to work out a plan for what I want to do in Canada, so it's going to take me some research while I'm back home in Egypt.
Yeah, poverty doesn't spur the mind to write creatively. I've noticed if you need money, it's a terrible place to be to write. To write well, I mean, deadlines are good, but also like having some level of comfort where you're not fighting the creative ability sort of thing. A lot of people say that, well, you have no job, you have nothing else to do. Why don't you just sit down and write? And it's like,
It's because you don't have a job that you can't.
because you don't have the pressure. You don't have the deadline of like, well, if I get up at 6 and I write 2,000 words before 7, then I can get ready and go to work. You have that pressure, good. But if you have all day, you might sustain that for 3 weeks. Then it gets pretty tough after that. So, what's this novel that you're working on?
I have this obsession with royal families.
Okay.
Yeah. So we were a monarchy again up until the revolution, military coup, 1952, and I know that there are only a few members who are still alive and kicking. So my novel was about one of the descendants of the last king of Egypt, and how nobody ever knew about him and his existence until recently in modern Egypt. And there are some monarchists in Egypt who say that we should go back to monarchy. So if people would use him as an excuse to fight the current regime and try to go back to a monarchy.
This sounds like a serious novel.
Yeah, right.
Could you make it a comedy instead?
A comedy?
Why not? Just something
way
almost like
Sata-
is it Kite Runner? Not Kite Runner. White Tiger. The Indian novel. I think I don't know. Do you remember Audrey? She gave me this book.
Yeah.
Okay, so she was it White Tiger? Oh, what's it called? It's a famous Indian novel where this.
A comedy.
It's a funny book, but this poor guy basically moves up from the slum only because of a series of adventures that has him bottling the back of the head of the guy who pays him all of his money, and he goes on the run, but he's well off. And
Could be a source of inspiration. Yeah, I'd like.
What's
to.
it called? I can't remember. It's a famous book. Whenever I mention it, people are like, "Yes, I read that book," because it's been translated into English. I only say it could be a comedy because I don't know. I think the world's so serious these days. I mean, does it need any more serious stuff?
Probably not. Yeah, you're right.
Monarchy, comedy. Good question. No idea. So would you write this in Arabic or is this going to be in English?
Arabic. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think I'm confident enough to write fiction in English. No. Yeah, things like articles, something concrete I can.
Yeah, Beijing Review is all English.
Yeah, but it was like concrete. You talk about real world, like real life stuff. No, not in. I wrote stuff in English, like again Facebook posts in English, and it was creative writing sort of stuff. I can be good with English as well, but I don't know. For the time being, I don't have the confidence. Maybe after living in Canada for some time, maybe.
Mm-hmm. So with your, why do you not feel? I'm surprised that actually you say that you're not confident in English writing. I mean, this is
and even in speaking. Yeah, I still have insecurities.
In what do you think is the cause for that? Is it just because you grew up learning it a certain way and?
There are a number of reasons. There's always number of reasons. Yeah, maybe I should just start with one reason and move from there. One reason is that how I learned English. So so all the way from kindergarten up until I graduated from uni, it was basically what they call grammar translation. So we never spoke English. It was always grammar and English to Arabic or Arabic to English translation, and even the grammar terminology was in Arabic.
Okay.
So it was basically useless. But I had again this knack for languages, natural knack for languages. So I kept pushing myself to like listen to songs, watch movies, and trying as much as possible to use English with anybody who could speak it. So when I look at other non-native speakers around me, and I feel like they are much more confident speaking the language. They're much more natural. They use idioms more easily, more smoothly. Whereas and I think again back to my perfectionism, I'm always very aware of the mistakes I make when like a certain sound, a pronunciation, a certain grammar mistake, and I get very like flustered. Yeah.
I wonder if part of being a naturalized or native speaker is to know that you made a mistake and not care.
Yes.
I hear how I speak sometimes, like even on this daily audio blog that we've talked about. I mean, the number of mistakes. I stumble, I stutter, I slur, I make wrong tenses all the time. And people are going to listen to this and go, yep, he doesn't know how to speak.
It's the prerogative, right? Is that like you feel you own the language, it's your language, you don't have to worry about that, right? Or
I was kind of going more for volume. Like if I say enough words, people will forget the thing that I messed up and just move on. Although I know that people can splice and dice these audio files and video files and replay it lots of times. Look at what he said instead. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, when I hang out with native speakers, sometimes I notice a lot of grammar mistakes, but I feel like they have the right to it. It's their language, whereas I can't do that.
You don't own English, even though you're involved in ESL industry here in China.
Yeah, I know. I don't feel so. Again, I'm proud of where I am, and I think I remember this quote I once saw. What really matters is what you do is what you have, and I had very little when it comes to education, and I came a long way, I would say.
You're doing a podcast in English. I mean,
yeah, but I was very insecure when I was like the whole day I was like.
You responded pretty quickly on Tuesday, and you said Thursday. I was 2 days. I'm like, oh, that's 32 hours. I'm like, okay, I guess I can make it work.
I'm chatty, I know that, so maybe that's why I was excited.
That's good. No, I appreciate that you took the time to.
And I always felt like I wanted to talk with you. We never actually had. I feel like this is one of the.
Probably the only conversation. Well, yeah. We've talked before in the office back when.
About NFTs. That was like one time.
Oh yeah. What was I saying back then?
Yeah, you mentioned NFTs, and it was my first time to hear about it. So I asked you what NFT stands for, and you explained, and that was it.
Do you remember what the explanation was? I want to know if it changed because it's come up again.
No, yeah, I think it was very clear, and I think after that I read a lot, and it was basically the same thing. If anything, you were very clear, very precise. Yeah. So NFTs, like you said, are just like in the real world. If there's a painting, you know that this is an original painting and someone owns it. Same goes for now digital paintings or digital files. There is something that identifies them as originals, and then you can own them. You own them, you can pay money to get them, and it will always be yours. So people might have copies, but you will always have the original. That's my understanding, right?
Yeah, I think it's also been added to now. I follow a lot of the stuff that Gary Vaynerchuk says about it, because he's big about NFTs, the blockchain, and he talks about going forward, NFTs, blockchain, and metaverse. So my understanding of how this is all going to work together is that the blockchain is the contract that supports it, so authenticates that the transaction is what it is. NFTs are your digital asset that can be moved around in all sorts of things, and the metaverse is where these things can be utilized in any number of ways. So it's and especially as a creative, as a writer, as a podcaster, I mean, being able to create things that are used in the digital world, and that can be realized or actualized in the real world as well. I mean, you have that sort of, it's like you buy a ticket to somewhere, and the ticket, normally you throw away your bus ticket or your concert ticket or whatever, right? But what if that thing was a piece of art done by someone who worked in a certain industry, and that part of that money for every purchase of an NFT, that some of it went to fundraising somewhere else, right? So that's one idea, but then being able to use that ticket again and again and again, given the companies or whoever are involved, that's sort of how these things can evolve. But I mean, that's...
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I was listening to this TED Talk recently. If I'm not mistaken, this is what they call now Web 3.0.
Getting into it, yeah.
Yeah.
Web 3.0, yeah, good question. Is that along the lines of 6G? I don't know. 5G is all your AI robots and cars talking to each other. Not robot, I mean, it's cars talking, smart technology. So like your watch is talking to your phone, is talking to your time capsule, is talking to your lights and your fan and everything.
The Internet of Things.
Yeah, Internet things basically. Web 3.0. Yeah, there's another thing that's big about Web 3.0. It's not really talked about at the moment. I don't know.
I'm not very good.
Quality. Just make something that people want, and then you can hire someone to help you do all of that stuff. Right, so the young kids who are better at technology, who grow up with this stuff, they can learn how it is, and you as an old man can just create good, gold, precious quality, right? I mean, that's what I'm going for anyway, I hope. So going forward then, you're departing China, you didn't learn Chinese, oh well, whatever, you're writing in Arabic. Are you still maintaining that blog or not?
No, I think like blogs in general, especially in the Arab world, kind of went out of fashion.
Why don't you try it in English? A lot of people still blog in English.
Yeah, I know that. But it takes a lot of time and effort to stand out, right? To be...
I've never concerned. Well, then again, people say, "Yeah, Steve." No, wow, a handful. I mean, it's gone up and down with. Depends on where I am and what I'm writing about. But in terms of I don't have tens of thousands of followers. Even despite the fact that I've been writing for 10 years, 12 years online, I've never made the push to do that. I mean, there was a token effort back when Twitter was just getting its legs back in 2011, 2012. I was like, oh, maybe. The difference between me and the travel bloggers that I know of who made it, they weren't just traveling and getting hammered in the bar every night. Shocking, right? They were actually writing blog posts, securing sponsorships, working, they were on their computer, they treated it like a job, and they would stay longer in places because they had to in order to get the necessary work done. Whereas I just wanted to go. My whole, the blog was so I could write down a few things, let my mom know that I'm still alive, that's it. Same with Facebook. But all my YouTube videos YouTube videos were basically a backup just in case I lost my camera or a hard drive. It was never meant to be some sort of glitzy, glammy travel experience. No. Mine was the slum. My videos are the Egyptian slum of the YouTube travel world. I mean, you get the grit, the real, that's uncut, that's what the world looks like. That's what
I'm ashamed to have made the association between Egyptian and slum. Now you're using it as an idiom.
Egyptian housing around the pyramids.
That's a more euphemistic way of...
They're uncut, they're uncensored, a lot of it. I mean, there's a lot more that I could post. It's just, it takes time to upload. I never had the patience to do it. I more want to keep on going. My big thing was that I want to work around the world. I want to work with other people around the world. Anyone could go travel. And even with the travel blogging, the Instagram and everything, anyone can make it look good. And there's enough of the fakes out there that it's kind of it's not worth trying to break through all of that. And I would rather have the experience of moving to a country living beside these people and actually gaining an understanding like that rather than getting just the passport stamp, the picture, the video. And that's sort of been a guiding force. It's how I've ended up in China for so long. So
And maybe that's why you can't develop your blog further, right? Because you...
Too busy doing other things,
Yeah.
and maybe I just don't know how to do it either. I mean, I understand the concept, but it almost takes the fun out of it, to tell you the truth. To sit around and try to market something as being bigger than what it is, right? I'm sitting there going, well, even with this podcast, you were asking me, is this on Apple or Google? I'm like, it should be.
Yeah.
It's not, but it should be, yes.
But it's so easy to push them to any platform now for free, like Apple Podcasts or Google.
You can, yes, it's a lot easier than it was 5 years ago, a lot easier than 10 years ago, and I think of this too, like and all those travel bloggers that made it, they sat there and they uploaded. They dealt with the slow internet connections. I had no patience for it. I mean, thankfully we have 3 or 4 internet connections now. You can find one that works. Before you had like one, and it was slow. It just, nope, would rather go sit in the bar rather than deal with, you know, a blue line, a blue loading line, the pinwheel on the MacBook. You're going, that is my, I can't, no, very, very little patience with technology in that way.
But I also felt when speaking about blogs and podcasts, I felt like my podcast in Arabic kind of made it much faster than my blog. I still get notifications, although like I stopped 2 years ago or maybe less. I still get notifications of certain episodes getting liked or of people, like number of listens per month or things like that. At least in the Arab world, there's still demand for new podcasts that talk about different things. Whereas I think in general
So you have an Arabic podcast about living in China?
No, it's about...
For the last 3 years, what have you been doing?
Actually, it would have been a great idea. Too late, my friend. Where were you? Where were you, Stephen? We should.
I was here making my first episode at this table right here in this chair 3 years ago.
Yeah, that would have been great. Actually, there is, especially now after COVID, people are so curious about the China.
How are things going? Like, what's going on? Yeah.
There are people who do that as like vloggers, Egyptian vloggers. I'm not very good with camera, so cameras in general, so I don't want to do that. But maybe a podcast would have been a good idea.
Yeah.
Too late, my
But
friend.
you stopped podcasting, so this is actually something I learned from you on Tuesday, that you're a podcaster, former. But I mean, so what? How long were you doing this for?
This is a curse of being multi-talented. You want to start so many different projects and you don't see them through. I started while I was stuck in Egypt. I have this friend of mine, and I think it's no secret that we both have mental health issues. And we were very good at like analyzing our problems, and you know, we had those moments of like, yes, you get me, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Why don't my parents get me? Why don't my friends just ask me to pray more or to like get closer to God, or just snap out of it and shake it off and things like that. I think it's common in
That's the old world response now.
Yeah. So
you're not depressed, you're just not busy enough or not motivated enough, right?
Things like that. So we thought about starting a podcast about mental health, like raising awareness about this. And we wanted the format to be very simple. It would be a call, because she lived in Cairo, I lived in my home city, so it was a call, very informal. I think it's similar to what we're doing here, but we stuck to a shorter duration, so 30 minutes or sometimes even shorter. We choose a topic, and then we'd have very rough talking points, and then we try to cover as much of these as possible during the podcast, and then we'll finish with a song.
Wow, this sounds happy.
Yeah,
good. Okay.
There's always a song that is thematically linked to the podcast, the episode, and we had some listeners, so we'd ask for feedback and then or questions or something like that, and then we discuss those in the next episode. Yeah, it was good actually.
It sounded like you actually had followers and everything.
Yeah, we had some.
Mental health issues, though. I mean, I hate to say it, it's the trend. And I mean, it's a huge trend right now that you can jump on if you wanted. I don't. I mean, I deal with my own issues. I don't feel like I need to talk about them. I'd rather be on the other side, sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, so how many episodes did you do with?
Only 10.
10. Okay,
Yeah, 10
well,
episodes.
that's a good start. Well, okay, so then after 10, did you enjoy the process? Did you not enjoy it?
But we did enjoy it so much. Although it was, especially that it was low tech and it was very easy to prepare for the episodes. We had some listeners, so it was motivating. But at the same time, the fact that we now live in 2 different countries, it's not enough excuse, but yeah.
You wanted a phone call.
Yeah, you're right, you're right. We could have done more. But again, like coming back to China, there was a lot of investment in this. So, no, we didn't do enough, I have to say.
It's well, I don't think you're alone in that. Starting a podcast and then abandoning it, or stopping, or realizing maybe it's just not something that you want to do at the moment. The same thing happened with blogs. I mean, a lot of the people. I think I started my blog, my website when like everybody had a blog, and I remember telling someone that I had a blog, and they're like, "Oh, you're just another one of these people with a blog." I'm like, "Yeah." And now I look at it 12 years later, still going. Same with this podcast. Like this one, I haven't. The other one, I think 2020 is going to be that year when you look back and go, everyone had a podcast at that time, and you're going to see a trickle off, sort of going into the next decade.
That is definitely right. That is so true. Especially that, yeah, when I check some blogs on Arabic blogs, on
2017 is the last
like
post.
2 episodes. Yeah, exactly. 2 episodes and things like that. Especially now that, again, technology is a double-edged sword because it makes things easy, but because it democratizes things, it means that anybody with any kind of idea which is not very well developed, half-baked, can start something and then abandon it. So you end up with a lot of quantity, like volume of things, but not enough quality, not enough continuity. But in luckily enough, we stopped at 10 episodes, and we said that this was the end of season 1. So there should always be, we can always have a comeback and start season 2. So, yeah.
Not a bad idea. I know that seems to be one of the trends in podcasting, because people don't want to do this every day or every week. I know I didn't want to do this every week. I tried it for the first 2 years to schedule interviews, and I hated it because it just takes all the fun out of it. You're running around. This person confirms, then they cancel. That person says maybe, and then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to treat this podcast like a live show, like a tour. I'm going to keep in touch with a bunch of people, and if they're ready, if they're free, let's do it. If not, no problem. That's another reason I started my audio digest, is to keep track of things that are going on in China, to sort of mark the time, so in a year, it's a lot easier to do a podcast. I mean, you've heard it. It's rough. It's uncut. It's me smacking my lips and everything. It's not edited. It's not compressed or limited or anything. But it's a lot easier than writing a blog. A lot easier, I found. This technology has made it so much easier, I think.
Imagine putting all of this on paper, all of we've talked about so far on paper. It's in writing, I mean.
Well, this would have, because you've written for Beijing Review. Imagine trying to record something in this day and age, and then editing an article based on that, like crafting an article as a journalist. I don't understand why you would. It doesn't, just publish the whole thing. I mean, you lay out some ground rules, and you probably know your guest beforehand. I guess it sort of depends on who you're talking to and what you're going to be talking about. But I mean, imagine. I think the data is there, the room is there, the internet connections are there. Publish the thing, the whole thing.
Yeah.
I don't understand why it has to be edited and crafted to be a news article anymore. I think it should be more open. That's my take.
Yeah, but the time it takes to read or listen to such a thing would be too much. And money is time. People don't have so much time to spend on what you have to say or what you have to,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. People have said, Steve, your podcast is too long. Could you edit it? I'm like, no, I refuse. I refuse because in 5 years, you're going to come back to that MP3 file and you'll be like, I'll listen to it. And then you're going to listen to the whole thing.
That's right. Yeah, what you're saying is very interesting because there is a trend now in the Middle East, at least I don't know about the rest of the world, where people are challenging this notion that people's attention span is getting shorter and shorter and pushing for like longer episodes on YouTube where people just like us now are more comfortable, they are not in a rush and things don't have to be edited heavily. There's a lot of raw footage. There is that, and surprisingly, there is a lot of viewership for such content. So maybe people are happy to do that if they see the value, if they know that there's quality. Yeah, it's a counter kind of trend.
Well, YouTube's also introduced YouTube Shorts now, and it used to be a lot more difficult. What you had to do was upload two separate files. So you have your main file that was the whole interview, then you maybe had the audio version, which was also another file, and then you had clips. Now YouTube does it for you. You go onto your main file, you upload that one main file, and you go to the timeline, and it says clip, and you create a short, a 60-second short, done. I'm like, this is what I wanted to be doing 10 years ago. And so now the technology is here, I am taking advantage of it, like absolutely. So that being the case, with putting everything on YouTube like that, I'm also, in terms of getting on Apple Podcasts and stuff, I'm still very aware that there's a big media that owns a lot of this stuff, and so that's why I like to keep my own website and MP3 files available. So I'll always have that, and then I have a tertiary backup as well, just in case. So it's more for my own sort of, fear of losing these files. It's like, well, yeah, I lived in China. I talked to him before he became a famous author. They prove it, right? I mean, that sort of thing where, I mean, it is...
Cancelled this episode later.
Posterior. Yeah, who knows? It'd be canceled for whatever reason in 20, whatever it is. So going forward, you're going to Canada. That's the plan.
Your country.
Yeah,
we're going to be compatriots very soon.
You've said that, and I'm like, yes, I guess we are going to be compatriots. Will I be there? Very good question. You'll be more in Canada than I am at that point. Because who knows? I mean, China might still have another uprising of COVID. I might still be locked down in this apartment by the time you get there.
Especially that you want to be in China. You don't want to get out.
I have nowhere else to go. Again, I mean, Mom's still in good health, as far as I know. Family, nieces and nephews are growing up. I mean, they know of the uncle who's somewhere in China, but they see the Facebook videos, so they know I'm alive. They know I have a huge beard now. How much influence do you have as an uncle? How much do you help your mother by living in her home, eating her food? I mean,
probably not much.
Right. It's like you'd be better off if you just went and did something productive. So, do I want to stay in China? Oh, I have had a blog idea of. I've been thinking of this. Could China be home? And I do think of the people, the guy who owns Jing A, the Plan B guy Trevor. He's been here for 10 years, longer than that. But there's a few of these people who've been here since like SARS, and there's not many of them. Very few of them have survived that whole gauntlet of time, and you see a lot of them leaving this year. Could China be home? Good question. I have nowhere else to go, sadly. I mean, I just, for better or worse, signed this contract a couple days ago. Signed another work contract a couple days ago. So I'm here for at least another 3 weeks. Kidding, kidding. But nowhere else to go. So I don't know. But you're moving to Canada. What's taking you there? Why is Canada the land of freedom and paradise and honey and whatever it is?
It's not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Actually, like I was just trying to immigrate to any first world country.
You just picked. So Canada just won because it was the easiest?
Not the easiest, but it was the only country that gave me this opportunity. So I tried Australia, I tried New Zealand, I tried many European countries, the US and Canada, and yeah, Canada was kind of, it's not easy, but at least it's straightforward, and I had what it takes to immigrate to Canada to prove that I'm eligible for immigration, so I did that.
What do you need?
Yeah.
What's the
You
process?
need to have good education. In my case, I have a degree in pharmacy, so that's like in demand.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have the language proficiency in both English and French. I have some money in my bank account.
Helps.
Helps, of course. What else? I haven't committed any crimes in the past, so I have non-criminal records from all countries that I've lived in. Yeah, things like that. Work experience, of course. Yeah, that's what it takes to immigrate to Canada.
It sounds like pretty standard living things. Like you haven't killed anybody. Good. You've had a job. You have money. Okay, so you haven't spent everything. Okay, and you're educated. It sounds like pretty okay. I don't know.
But still, it is difficult for a lot of people. The kind of education they got, maybe the language proficiency.
Right.
Like in Egypt, for example, what stops most people from immigrating is the fact that they can't get the score needed, the IELTS score needed to immigrate to Canada. They spend years and they still can't get 3 sevens and an 8. That's like the standard.
3 sevens and an 8.
And an 8. So for example,
Across all skills, or
yeah. So you need, for example, 8 in at least one skill and 7 at least in the rest of them. So people struggle, especially in writing. Like writing can be particularly difficult for Arabic speakers.
Really?
For most people, yeah.
because of the grammar issue.
Because of grammar, because of the structure. Most of the time, it's the coherence and whether the text makes sense or not.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. Yeah. So yeah, back to Canada. So yeah, Canada took me in, and do I see Canada as like the promised land? I'm not sure. I know that there is a lot of problems in Canada and in most countries right now because of the war and the inflation, economic crisis. But I feel like I can have I could potentially start a new life in Canada. I want to learn something new. I want to go back to school. That's why I want to spend some time in Egypt before I immigrate for good to Canada. I want to figure out what I want to do with the rest of my life, what I want to study, what kind of career I want to pursue in Canada. I think in this regard, Canada would give me opportunities. So that's what I'm excited about. I'm excited about an easier day-to-day life.
Mm-hmm.
A less noisy, less polluted environment to live in.
Not much pollution. For one thing that Canada does well, I mean, despite all the, I mean, lots of energy in the western provinces, but blue skies more often than not. I mean, unless you live like in Sudbury or like around the factories, and it's gonna. And you were thinking of Hamilton actually, or Toronto, that area that is very industrial. You might not get your blue sky.
So blue skies.
No, you're gonna get the Beijing orange sun. Basically,
Still much better than Egypt.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. So, have you decided on which place exactly? You were saying Ontario, and you were thinking like even going into the trades, which I mean, yeah, they need them in Canada. Pharmacy, in
But I
high
don't
demand.
want to go back to pharmacy now.
No, why not?
I think it was the wrong choice of school back home. And
Typical first degree. Okay.
yeah, but in Egypt it's even worse because people get like high grades in high school, and then they feel that this shouldn't go to waste, so they go to what we call in Egypt the top school. So basically, medicine, pharmacy, dentistry, and engineering. So I, for example, I was kind of aware that I'm more into languages and into fine arts, but it was too much of a risk to do that. And I don't think my parents would have approved anyway. Not like China, I think I had much more freedom to choose, but I couldn't fathom the idea that I would just use, I got 100% in high school. That's how we do things. So 100%, that means like full mark in all subjects.
That's good.
It's almost impossible. Like if you look at the bell curve, that's almost impossible. And I think in Egypt the bell curve is kind of shifted.
How much did you pay for that?
No. No, we don't buy certificates. Not yet, anyway.
Well,
So yeah, I don't want to go back to pharmacy. This was a wrong choice. I worked in pharmacy as a community pharmacist, as a teaching assistant. I never liked it. That's why I made the shift, the career shift to TEFL. And I think I want to do something else, another career shift. These days I'm thinking architecture, something that has to do with like a craft, something like
working with your
carpentry,
hands, right?
stained glass artist, something like that.
Well, I'm not sure if that's very ubiquitous in Canada. Could be. Don't know.
Could be, yeah.
But you basically, with your comment about you made before we started recording, how China was looking for a different type of expat. In all of the subjects that you just said, Egypt is pumping out. It almost sounds like you could come back here at some point. China's going to draw you back because you're in that stem cell or STEM industry.
Stem
cell industry. There you go.
Could be true. Yeah, maybe I would like to come back at some point. Who knows?
You can though. That's the thing. Like you're leaving only after 3 years, whatever. Even some of the people who've been here longer can always come back.
Yeah,
right? It might not be next year, might not be 2 years, but think of how long COVID's been going on. And
yeah, I think I would like to go back when this madness is over.
might be a while, so you might land in Canada before I do. But what else are you sort of looking forward to in Canada? You said, I mean, a lot of the day-to-day stuff. You're looking at work, parks, okay.
Parks, more cycling, like cheerful people. I hope, like
Canadians are cheerful.
Yeah, like
much
I
more.
really want to be in a community where I can go to the same coffee shop in the morning and know the barista and be like, hi, how are you doing today? How's life? Something that I haven't been able to do in Egypt nor
here.
in China.
Yeah, no, they always change.
So I want to do that in Canada. I want to have this sense of community. What else do I want to do in Canada? More hiking, more like being in touch with nature. Canada, I've never driven. I've never driven
Okay.
a car in my life, so I want to do that.
So you're going to go to Canada. Thanks for making our roads safer.
Yeah, this is the first thing I want to do without a license.
Farmers would hire. Well, you'd have to be on the farmland to do it, but certainly you'd be learning how to drive a tractor.
Oh,
They would ask you if you have a driver's license, and because that's official sort of way of doing it. But that's where a lot of farm kids learn before they even have a license.
like that.
Yeah.
I might do it their way. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I want like a.
Do you think it'd be very different? Like you're going to Canada. Well, that's in the pipeline. Would it be very different? Like if the States came out and said, "Okay, no, we'll take you."
No.
Would you go there?
I never wanted to. Like, the U.S. was always on the very bottom of my list.
Wow.
I've never wanted to go to even to visit, and I don't want to live there.
Why? I mean, you want freedom and like you can do anything and experience because the United States is so big. I mean,
I never said I wanted freedom. I feel like in Egypt I'm free enough to say whatever I want to say.
Right.
It's not like freedom in the political sense of the word. I'm not after that. There's not much that I want to say. I feel right now it's such a bad time in American history. I think the society there is extremely polarized, and I think it's some pessimists even think or predict some sort of a civil war. Some people actually went as far as to say that there could be something like that because
I think it's being fought. That's social media. It's the safest social like civil war that they can have. A lot of people are going to get upset. They're going to get canceled and blocked, and they'll all go back to work.
okay.
I think the civil war is being fought right now, online.
Okay.
That's that's how I'm taking it.
It's
right
a
now.
virtual civil war.
Very much so. And I think that they need the metaverse. This is part of the NFT, the metaverse. They're just it's gonna be a Counter-Strike 6 or what is it? The Lord, what's that other? I don't know, like a Sim City sort of battle or something. Yeah, that's it. It's going to be all in the metaverse. It's going to be.
Come think of it, it's better than a retail world.
I think that you took my rook. It's going to be like a big chess match, right? You killed my rook. Well, now I'm going to forever hold a grudge against you, but you can always join another metaverse sort of thing. So, I don't know.
I like that. I like that.
A lot safer war than actually having guns. Like Russia and Ukraine right now. That's a little bit more dangerous. That's not metaverse. That's very real at the moment.
Healthcare system.
Yeah, kind of.
Violence.
But you are like Canada's healthcare systems. You're not like here in China. You go to your international clinic. You're in. You walk in. You're in. Canada. You walk in. 16 hours later, you're still waiting.
But I understand that it's still much better than a lot of countries, including the U.S.
Yeah, the States. If you went to a private clinic, there'd be no comparison. You'd have lots of you'd have to pay a lot. But Canada doesn't have a private healthcare system. Alberta might have. There was an argument a couple of years ago about having a two-tier healthcare system, private and public, so that people who had the money and who didn't have the time get their whatever they need done, and then still have the public healthcare system that would take care of the people. As a result, a lot of Canadians actually fly down to the States if they want to get something done quicker. They just they go down to Florida, or they go down to Minneapolis.
Also have the money, you mean? Or
the money, or it's just quicker to do it as well. Sometimes it's not always the money; it's just the convenience, and like you're in pain. You want to have it solved. You don't want to sit around for 3 months waiting for a scan to confirm that you're in pain. I knew that. Now you have to wait 6 months for the surgery. That's the reality of the healthcare system in Canada. It does take a while. If you're bleeding and almost dying on the floor of the hospital, they'll take you in. As long as there's no one else in worse condition before you, sort of thing. So it sounds great, and it is great. It's very good to not have to worry about whether or not you can pay the medical bill. The downside is that sometimes you're waiting even just to see the doctor to get in for a checkup.
Thanks for the reality check.
It's that's where your tax dollars are going.
Keep throwing those at me.
Well,
to lower my expectations.
Yeah, well, you did such a good job for Egypt. I'm just returning the favor with Canada. And I hear a lot of people, they do want to move to Canada, and it is a great country. I think the one other thing that would be an issue is there are a lot of talks about human rights, Indigenous, First Nations, Native Americans. That's the big racial divide in Canada right now, is between the white colonizer, the settler, and the natives. How does immigration play into that? Good question. It's one of these things where you're going to find out when you immigrate.
It feels like I'm going to find out a lot when I go.
I don't think a lot of it's going to. I don't think it's going to be bad though. I don't think. Good question. If someone moved to Egypt, never been there before, what do you think their experience would be like if they were to write a blog about it? I mean, would it be really bad or be really good? Because I kind of look at, if someone moved to China, same idea. If someone moves to Canada, I actually think that you'd have nothing to say in Canada. Life would be too good. It would just be so standardly day-to-day predictable. Like, I didn't almost get run over today. I know the barista.
I like that.
It's the blue skies again. Here's a picture.
I love
Here
that.
in China, you're like, Beijing, you're like, I can look at the sun and not burn my eyes out. What color is it today?
There's always like kind of action going on. Yeah, Egypt is like that too. There's a lot to write about. There's always like new experiences. So much unpredictability, which I think lends itself to better writing or to better reporting. Maybe in Canada it would be boring, but I appreciate this kind of boring. Yeah.
Maybe you'll write your novel instead. You're going to have to escape into your mind because you won't be threatened by the why my delivery guys who might hit you going the wrong way down the street.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Something to look forward to.
Yeah. All right. Well, so where can people find you if they want to hire you, get in touch with you, find your writings and maybe your podcast?
Yeah, I'm thinking now. So I have my podcast, but it's in Arabic. Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. Maybe I'll leave links for those Arabic speakers or those Arabic learners. where else can people find me?
Do you still have a website?
No,
Okay.
no. I'm just thinking. Yes, no, I don't have much like online presence.
Not a bad
That's
thing.
a bad thing. No.
I don't know. Depends what you want to do with it.
The blog is inactive. Maybe I should start something. Maybe I should take this more seriously. Like expressing
What a
myself.
climax. I mean, we've talked about Egypt, we've talked about life in China, moving to Canada, and no website, nothing. You know what? I'm just going to go live in my...
Disappear.
just,
Yeah.
well, and
Maybe
start a
I'm
new
just
life.
a ghost. You're talking
Start
to
a new
yourself.
life. No, it'll be really interesting to see how things... We're talking about immigrating to Canada. She never did.
Who was she? Can I ask?
Natalie. She
Okay.
episode number 17, I think
But
it was. She was
She
talking
made
about,
it to the Netherlands. Which is
she
even-
her life went on a different path, and it was within that 1 year, 2 years or something like that. I can't. She left last year, I think it was.
Yes. last
But
year.
yeah, she was on 2 years ago. So we were talking about this, going to Canada and immigrating and stuff like that. And yeah, her life just went on a different tangent. Just how I'm not sure if it was quickly. It just did. Right. It
Yeah.
wasn't. I don't know if anyone really saw it. Maybe it was an option, but it wasn't.
I wouldn't be
obvious.
unhappy with a different course of events. Actually, I wouldn't mind that as long as I'm reinventing myself.
Right. But I mean, yeah, it's Canada is the current inspiration.
Exactly.
Oh, good.
The
Fantastic.
red maple leaf. That's the inspiration.
Should people know anything else? What else?
No,
Final words before you leave China.
you're so easy to speak to. I like that. You put me at ease, and yeah, it's so. Yeah, it's been nice talking to you.
Fantastic having you. Thank you.
Thank you so
Appreciate it,
much.
Omar. Okay,
Thank you.
we'll cut it there. Thanks. Appreciate it.
That's episode 32, folks. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Nice chat with Omar today. If you want to get in touch with him, I know he doesn't have a website at the moment, but I will let you know. I'll have all the show notes and the MP3 file available up on my website, stevensersky.com. That's where you can find everything for episode number 32 with Omar Badr. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. We'll talk again. Bye-bye.